Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021 regular meeting of the Lane County Board of Commissioners. This is the first time in 2021 this board has met where we are not on the extreme risk category for Lane County, but the high risk, which means some establishments are slowly starting to reopen, and we will hear a report on that. Before this meeting begins, a statement. This Board of Commissioners and county staff are truly saddened to hear about the racist attack that occurred to a family on February 15th, where a Black resident of the River Road neighborhood found a noose in his yard and a racial slur sprayed on his car. Days later, racial slurs were sprayed painted on the exterior of a local business in Eugene. We understand that incidents like these make it feel unsafe for residents of color, even those who were not targeted, and really all of us. We value equity and respect in Lane County. We denounce white nationalism. We believe Black lives absolutely matter, individually and collectively. As a board of elected representatives and as county staff, we are committed to putting in the work to achieve not just racial equity, but racial and gender equality as well. We have before and again now denounced the violence on January 6th, 2021 in Washington, D.C. Hate, violence, racism, bigotry to anyone, especially any marginalized group, should not be tolerated in our or any other community. The Lane County Sheriff's Office is now conducting an investigation into this incident in the River Road neighborhood. It is heartwarming to see residents rally against such behavior and support others in the community. It is critical to check in on family members, friends, neighbors during incidents such as these. We value equity, respect, and kindness, and will continue to work toward providing a safe, welcoming, and respectful community for everyone in Lane County. We also understand it is incumbent upon those of us honored with leadership roles to speak out. Our hearts go out to those impacted. Sadly, we have a lot of work to do. Conversely, I would also like to say that in my hometown of Springfield last night, the Springfield City Council unanimously chose to fill a vacancy with Damian Pitt. Damian Pitt, who is with the Lundquist College of Business as an academic advisor and diversity initiatives specialist, is going to bring that very lens that we are talking about to my community, I believe, in some very of value and significant ways. So with those two statements, let's begin today's meeting. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none, is there any emergency business? Seeing none, which means I see Mr. Mokraheisi shake his head. This is the moment now, this is the time for public comments. So with this format, virtual format, and to the public watching, you're registered in this meeting system as attendees. Attendees are webinar participants who are audience members viewing the meeting. Your microphone and webcam are automatically muted as attendees. At this time, if you wish to participate in public comment, I will ask you to raise your virtual hand to be recognized. You should see a hand icon on the device you're using to watch the meeting. Press the hand icon once, which raises your hand. When public comment begins, our meeting, Diana will call names. When your name is called, you will be unmuted and given 3 minutes to make your public comment. When your 3 minutes are up, you'll return to muted status and the next name will be called. You can then continue to watch as long as you choose. The intent, obviously, is for everyone wishing to make a public comment to do so. In the event there are a lot of people that we don't have time for 3 minutes for each person, we may limit comments to 2 minutes. That is yet to occur while I've been chair. And speakers will be selected randomly if there's just too many to talk. At this moment, Diana, is there anyone that would like to address the board?
Thank you, Chair Bernie. Yes, I do see, it looks like 6 to 7 hands up. I will begin our public testimony today with Karen Kaplan, followed by Jim New. Karen, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Thank you all for your work and your opportunity to make public. My name is Karen Kaplan and I am in District 3. Thank you, Lori. As a retired zero waste professional and a member of the Citizens for Responsible Use of Plastics, I would like to thank you for putting forth an effort to call a work session to evaluate the opportunity for polystyrene ban in Lane County. In the age of worldwide movement on reducing and eliminating single-use and toxic plastics, I ask you again to follow through on this ban on a known carcinogenic food packaging. Packaging is a dinosaur and public health issue that has been banned in countless cities and states. In Oregon alone, it's been banned in Eugene 2020, Florence 2017, Portland 1996, Dearborn 1988, and recently in Newport. McDonald stopped using it in 1990 because of public health issues. I had the opportunity to read the report and recommendation from the County Waste Division, which will be given at 1:30 today. The report makes a strong argument for banning polystyrene from its health impacts to its environmental impacts. The report supports information that has been brought forth to the Commission over the past year regarding the toxicity of this material and manufacture and use. It also mentions that Kaplan City and states have banned it primarily for its impact on public health, with additional impacts on the environment, taxpayer dollars, and cleanup and water pollution. But the DEQ and state legislature has been proactively working on reducing single-use plastics. 3 of the bills mentioned in the waste management report are complex and going to take years to implement after hopefully passing. These are ambitious and cutting edge, but far from immediate. The modernization bill, HB 2065, for example, will be implemented in 2027. We are on the road to banning polystyrene, so momentum and opportunity is here now in 2021. Additionally, the bills mentioned incorporate requirements for plastics recycling. Of note, polystyrene has never been recycled curbside. Polystyrene food packaging is a contaminant, recycling is an insidious toxic item that ends up in the waste stream and littering our waterways, killing wildlife and filling storm water drains. By not dealing with this problem, it won't go away. It will continue to create negative impacts that will end up costing taxpayers and continue to negatively impact public health. The main potential impact mentioned in the report was on food service providers of having increasing costs to replace styrofoam. Doing nothing also at the cost of the taxpayers, as mentioned in the report. Solve listed polystyrene as the number 5 item that ends up being in marine debris, which has a high cost on polluting waterways where commodities such as fishing are affected, costing jobs, food source, and livelihoods, as well as public health. According to the city of Berkeley, over 65% of material collected in stormwater comes from single-use food service packaging. The taxpayers are enduring high costs of infrastructure to manage this type of material. Food service vendors also have to pay for increased public costs, regardless of having to pay price increase to change inputs. This is part of doing business. I understand the hardships that food service providers are enduring currently. Prices are going up for takeout and also delivery charges are exorbitant. I would be happy to pay an extra 10-15 cents to not have food served in styrofoam. I hope that the County Commission sees the opportunity to take the ban throughout Lane County. Considering COVID and considering the impact on food service vendors, could a ban be passed and required to enact? That would give restaurants time to hopefully get back.
Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Jim New, followed by Terry McDonald. Jim, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your testimony.
Thank you. Commissioners, can you hear me? Thank you. My name is Jim New. I live in Ward 7, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm glad technology is cooperating today. This afternoon, you'll be considering whether to impose a ban on polystyrene food service packaging in Lane County. These fossil fuel products are composed of cancer-causing chemicals such as benzene and styrene. The EPA and the International Agency of Research on Cancer has labeled them as human carcinogens, and yet we allow them to contain food products, hot food products that accelerate toxic off-gassing and chemical degeneration. These containers are not recyclable, end up in our waterways, and inevitably add to the growing list of fossil fuel products inundating our oceans. Climate and activists contend, why should we do something to prevent climate change when other areas are not? The same premise could be applied to the county ban on polystyrene. Commissioners may not have to make a decision on this ban if the state enacts one of the legislative bills in your packets. However, in the area of your responsibility, you can make a statement that you are serious about getting off of fossil fuels and their products for public health and public safety. Lane County is developing a climate action plan with an incredibly professional committee of local residents chosen to give you, the commissioners, direction. Part of their plan is to reduce the public's dependency on fossil fuels and their products and to move to renewable energy. Your ban on polystyrene shows leadership. I urge you to direct staff to option number 1 and ban polystyrene in Lane County. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Terry McDonald, followed by Cynthia and Brennan Matherly. Terry, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your comment. Terry, I do show yourself muted.
Chair Bernie, commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak. The idea of banning the clamshell food affected polystyrene is something that is happening virtually everywhere in the country, and the major food chains have already got on the train that is making sure that they have other substitute materials for that, primarily paper products. So as such, I see no reason why this type of a ban on the clamshell food containers, so forth, that we have from restaurants and takeout would not be an appropriate thing to do. It does, however, lead to the larger issue. And the larger issue is that polystyrene and other plastics are discrete materials that we do have opportunities to recycle if we would just take the opportunity to do so. So currently, St. Vincent de Paul processes about 2 tons of polystyrene per month for recycling back into the marketplace. It's coming out of the packing materials, of course. It's the expanded polystyrene. But one of the problem materials we continue to see is the rigid polystyrene that is identifiable in the waste stream and should have an opportunity to be recycled. It is not something that can be done quickly, but it is definitely something that I think that we ought to put on our radar as a place to go in the future. So in terms of the packaging material that the advocates are pushing for now, I think it's probably a good idea, and there's no reason why it shouldn't go forward. In terms of taking the ball and moving it a little bit further, I would encourage you to think about how to do that. A lot of that polystyrene comes out of hospitals, out of rigid applications in the marketplace, the DVD cases and so forth. There's no reason why that material could not be recycled if we would just take the opportunity to allow a nonprofit like St. Vincent to find a way to push that product forward in a way that would make our environment better and move our environmental goals closer. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Cynthia and Brennan Matherly. I'm not sure which one is speaking, followed by Deborah McGee. Cynthia and Brennan, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. I do show you are self-muted. Oops, I have the wrong one. There you go.
Good morning. Did that work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Brennan is in a class and he can't get out. It's AP math, and so sorry, he asked to please excuse him, but I'm speaking for him. This is Cynthia Matherly from Ward 7, and thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity to speak. I'm speaking about foodware made of polystyrene, EPS, which you all know is trade name for styrofoam. We understand that it's a health and environmental hazard from start to finish because of its leaking toxic substances, especially in hot drinks and alcohol, and reheated leftovers of oily and acidic foods. And unfortunately, school districts in Oregon still serve food and drinks to students in polystyrene foodware. It's easily identifiable when we use it in our day-to-day takeout foods. It's a number 6 recycle sign. Tens of thousands of workers in the manufacturing of it are exposed to styrene, leading to severe illness and death associated with cancers and heart disease. As a neurotoxin, babies' developing brains are affected. Studies show a link in ADHD and delayed learning. Besides contributing to climate change, its manufacturing leads to a dangerous air pollutant at ground level associated with nausea, asthma, bronchitis. If burned or incinerated, toxic carbon monoxide is released into the air. Used for just minutes, it can take hundreds of years to degrade. Fragile and easily broken up, its small pieces are consumed by land and marine animals, causing harm and death. In water environment, it absorbs toxins, heavy metals, and those microscopic pieces ingested by aquatic life enter our food chain. Styrene residues are found in 100% of all samples of human fat tissue. Because babies and children often put things in their mouth and are crawling around, they are more prone to absorb those toxic chemicals found in the polystyrene and styrofoam. There are affordable and healthier alternatives costing pennies more per item for food serviceware, which is so important a consideration when some restaurants right now are struggling in the pandemic. Many of us concerned citizens and groups have met individually with Lane County commissioners over the past year. You've told us that you support the regulation of these unneeded and likely carcinogenic chemicals in our food chain, bringing your own ideas of how to move forward. Over 400 cities and municipalities in the USA have banned single-use polystyrene foodware. Portland banned it in the late 1980s. Eugene and Florence have prohibited food serviceware. It's well past time to ban polystyrene in food and serviceware in Lane County. The county commissioners can step forward and enact policy here in Lane County. Be bold and be the change your county needs to see. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker is Deborah McGee. Deborah, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Good morning. My name is Deborah McGee. I've lived in Lane County for 40 years. Heather Buck is my representative. I organize with 350 Eugene. We have over 2,000 supporters in the community. After my parents died in 2010, partly out of wanting a break from a couple of years of caring for them and their health issues, and partly because they left me a small amount of money, for the first time ever, we went on a paid guided adventure trip, sea kayaking in the Bunsby Islands for 7 days off the coast of Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. The sea kayaking was death-defying at times and amazing. The whales, bears, indigenous history, and hospitality were outstanding. But what was everywhere, even on the islands where no human beings lived, was polystyrene. Every beach was covered. Big pieces, small microplastic bits, almost as many as the grains of sand. It was really sad to see and experience. According to the website, The World Counts, each of us right now has an average of 700 chemicals in our bodies that are not supposed to be there. What's truly scary is that those chemicals mix with each other to create the so-called cocktail effect, so we don't really know how they affect us. Yes, for everyone. Polystyrene is littered more than any other waste product. Despite being only 1% of all waste, it is 10 to 40% of waste found in streams. It's brittle, it's light, it blows, and it breaks down, but it doesn't go away for a very long time. Fossil fuels are poisoning the earth. Part of that poisoning comes from making fossil fuels into plastics, including polystyrene. Over 50 chemical byproducts are released during the manufacturing of styrene, contaminating air, water, and communities that live near these facilities. Polystyrene is made up of multiple units of styrene, which is believed to be a carcinogen by the Department of Health and Human Services and the International Agency on Research for Cancer. Polystyrene does not break down easily, and it's often burned to be disposed of. It releases styrene into the air and produces a mix of toxicants that impair nervous systems. I went on a medical mission trip with my church to Cambodia to help build a hospital where degrading piles of plastic and burning polystyrene made the air very difficult to breathe. Polystyrene is a fossil fuel. It's a public health hazard. It's bad for the environment and our health. While I understand that Lane County's ban is like a drip of water on a stone, many cities and counties have enacted various types of polystyrene bans. We can do our part. If we do together, we will wear away that stone. Thank you for protecting our health and well-being.
Thank you for your public comments. Lynn, followed by Tom Kreider. Jim, I will reset the timer and unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment. I do show you are self-muted, Jim. There you go.
I urge the Board of Commissioners to adopt a ban on polystyrene EPS food serviceware for the entire county by the use of York County Health Authority. Here are some startling quotes from the EPA. Styrofoam production is the 5th largest creator of toxic waste in the United States. Acute exposure to styrene in human results in respiratory effects such as mucous membrane irritation, eye irritation, and gastrointestinal effects. Animal studies reported effects on the central nervous system, liver, kidney, and eye, and nasal irritation from inhalation exposure to styrene. And here's a short list of quotes directly from other municipal ordinances currently in place around the U.S. The actual list of municipalities is much, much longer. Pinole, California. The use of polystyrene products by food service providers and the sale of polystyrene products in the city is detrimental to the public health and welfare. Santa Cruz County. Styrene is a suspected carcinogen and neurotoxin which potentially threatens human health. The general public, especially the non-English speaking community, is not typically warned of any potential hazard from styrene. Seattle. It is in the best interest of health and safety and welfare of the people that regulations prohibit the use of certain EPS food service products and disposable food serviceware to reduce the cost of solid waste disposal by the city and to protect the environment. Westfield, Massachusetts, Board of Health. Potential effects of styrene exposure can cause eye and mucosal irritations and gastrointestinal issues. Possible effects on the central nervous system include headache, weakness, fatigue, depression, general dysfunction loss, and peripheral neuropathy. All of those ordinance quotes are concerned with human health. The following ordinance excerpts reference marine and coastal wildlife since Lane County has around 50 miles of coastline. Dana Point, California. EPS debris poses a risk to fragile ecological balance because wildlife often confuse EPS debris for a source of food, and ingest EPS can result in reduced appetite and nutritional absorption and death by starvation. San Francisco. EPS is a notorious pollutant that breaks down into smaller non-biodegradable pieces that are often mistaken for fish eggs by seaboards and other marine wildlife. Milpitas, California. Plastic debris, and in particular EPS, is a distinct litter concern because it's lightweight, floats, breaks down into small pieces, and readily travels from inland waterways out to the ocean, where it can be mistaken for food and other marine wildlife. It seems pretty obvious to me that you should immediately adopt a ban on polystyrene foodware for the entire county by use of your county health authority. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comments. We do have one speaker left, and that would be Tom Kreider. Tom, I will reset the timer, and you may begin your public comment. Tom, I do show yourself muted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning. My name's Tom Kreider and I live in Ward 4. I was all prepared for this morning with a summary of reasons why polystyrene should be banned from restaurant takeouts. And I started thinking that you've heard it all before, both sides, including from the summary that you received from Waste Management. So I scrapped what I had prepared and have chosen to present another perspective. We're in a public health crisis. The air we breathe, the food we eat, the items we buy are all creating an environment which constantly threatens our health. With COVID, some of us have learned that it is vital for our personal survival to protect ourselves from those around us. Yet even then, we take risks. My take on the recommendation from Waste Management is that you will not ban polystyrene because it would be economically harmful for the restaurant business. It just so happens that my son, who drives for Grubhub, says he's busy any night he chooses to drive because of how many people purchase takeout. Unfortunately for him, as a violinist, he cannot work in the profession that he prefers due to our public health issues. We all know it's less expensive to eat at home than to eat takeout or dine in a restaurant, yet people are still choosing to eat out rather than at home. I know when I buy takeout, I'm willing to pay a surcharge for recyclable or compostable containers rather than ones that put my health and our environment at risk. As a retired chemistry teacher, I suffer the consequences to my health as a result of long-term exposure to chemicals. I urge you to put the health of our citizens of Lane County above the financial concerns of its businesses. I thank you for your work on behalf of all the citizens of Lane County.
Thank you for your public comment. At this point, I do not have anyone else signed up for public comment, so I will return the meeting to you, Chair Bernie.
Thank you very much. A reminder, we do have a 10 a.m. time certain, but at this point, do any commissioners want to respond or provide remonstrance to the public input we just received? Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I want to start by really appreciating folks showing up and providing public testimony. We are here for you, and it means a lot that you would take the time out of your morning to share your perspective. I want to just say to all of you and anyone else watching, I completely agree. There is no doubt in my mind that polystyrene presents a toxic threat to both humans and the planet. That is not up for debate. It's a matter of our best next course of action. And I will have more comments, questions, and perspective on this issue when we get to that agenda item at our meeting later today. Finally, I want to thank and appreciate our chair for his opening comments this morning, but I would like to amplify them with a brief statement of my own, which is to say that on the heels of Black History Month, and as we enter March, which is Women's History Month, I'm going to share a quote from the noted abolitionist and author Harriet Beecher Stowe. She said, "The past, the present, and the future are really one. They are today." The issues that are before us, particularly surrounding these hateful acts committed recently in the River Road and Santa Clara areas of Wayne County, bear this statement out. There's really nothing new here, but we do have new opportunities every day. And I believe as community leaders an obligation to find and embrace new ways of operating, of holding people accountable for harms inflicted on our neighbors. To do so requires that we don't compromise the safety of some people in service to the comfort of others. Not doing this only perpetuates the harms. I am also saddened by these events, but my tears are not helpful. I'm angry that these kinds of acts continue to be committed, and I share the frustration that I'm hearing from community members about the slow and inadequate response on the part of institutions that supposedly exist to serve and protect us all. I'm resolute in my commitment to do my part and do better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. I have three very quick things. The first is in response to the testimony this morning, in particular to Terry McDonald. I'm encouraged by your discussion surrounding recycling, not just banning products, but the products that it's more difficult to ban, the TV packing and all of the other things that we all experience huge amounts of. Looking forward to the discussion surrounding polystyrene this afternoon. The second is that later during items from the commissioners and potentially in agenda team requests, I am going to be talking about a resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis in Eugene and in Lane County. I'll have more discussion on that later in this meeting. And then the third thing is very, very quickly, as I look out of my window right now, the Eugene Forestry Department is planting trees in my neighborhood. Now I have a 22-year-old neighborhood. And the birch trees were planted here, monoculture required by the city of Eugene to plant the birch trees, among other possibilities. They all died last year. They were all taken out last year. Several hundred beautiful birch trees throughout the city, many more than several hundred. But they're replacing the trees with 8 different species. So it's no longer going to be a monoculture street. It's going to be a street with 8 different types of trees. They're young, they're tiny, and they don't match our 20-year-old home. But it's wonderful that it is happening. And just to ease my own personal tension, I've repurposed some of our birch trees into beautiful white pens. I'll show you all some of those maybe later on. But using the wood wherever we can is
I forwarded
instrumental.
the Amazon recording of your class.
That forwarding with you. And thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
That is all I have this morning.
Yeah, I had to use my phone.
We're hearing static from someone. We don't know who, but if you could mute. Thank you so much, Vice Chair Farr. And yes, Commissioner Butt.
Thank you, Chair. I too want to appreciate your words in the beginning of our meeting regarding the racist acts that we're seeing in our community. I'm very proud of our board as a whole in the motions and resolutions that we've been passing since I came on board as commissioner a couple of years ago. We have made great strides in expressing how much we do not want to see racist acts in our community, yet they continue to happen every single day. And we need to do more. We always need to do more, not only to make the statements like what you made and Commissioner Traeger made today, but we know that there are ways in which racism comes and weaves in and out of our government systems each and every day. And we continue to find ways in which we can dismantle racism in our own government. And I look forward to doing more work with that. When it comes to our folks that were testifying today, appreciate all their time and effort for making their public comments. I will have more comments when we get to that section later today, but wanted to express that I have a great deal of support for product product stewardship, and that was in a lot of the material that we'll be talking about later today. It's different than bans, and so it's important to know what we are and are not considering, but there are several product stewardship, not resolutions, but bills that are in the state legislature as they're set out in our material today. And I would like to see us as a board support those measures. And hopefully this is something that the legislative committee on our board can consider and make a recommendation back to us as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other commissioners that would like to make a statement at this time? Okay. I want to thank everyone that provided their comments, and because we have a full agenda and we have a spot on the agenda to dig deeper into this issue, I also will withhold comments until that point in the agenda. At this point in time, we are on item 5A, County Administration, COVID-19 Response and Recovery, and we have Steve Mokrahysky and Steve Adams.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. We know you have a 10 o'clock time certain here, and it's been 3 weeks since we provided a COVID-19 update to you because the board's been down here for a couple weeks. Chair, as you noted at the beginning of the meeting, we do have some good news to start with, that our risk level was lowered from extreme to high last Friday. We've seen and continue to see increased number of vaccine doses provided to our community. Steve Adams will walk through the details there. And we're really encouraged by our ongoing and continued partnership with the University of Oregon, as well as expanding that partnership to include Benton County and Oregon State University to talk about the extensive surveillance testing that's happening in Lane and Benton County through the university systems, the work that's happening there, and advocating all of that extensive testing and the impacts of that on our case numbers in both Lane and Benton County to the state. I want to acknowledge that we know that there continues to be frustration there is still much higher demand and limited supply of vaccine, even though we're seeing our number of vaccines increase as more and more people become eligible under the state rules. We now, as of yesterday, have adults over 65 and older are now all eligible. And so there's frustration, particularly we're hearing from those 65 and older in our community, and you know, the concern about the difficulty in getting an appointment to get a vaccine. And the simple issue, frankly, is we have more people who are demanding the vaccine than supply that we have available, and so the appointments are going really quickly. I want to just note that we are prioritizing our seniors. We have worked through the larger part of the 1A category in Lane County, as well as schools and childcare and early learning. And so seniors, really the vast majority of new vaccines that we have available are going to our seniors. And then I just want to note that our overarching priority from the beginning, as it's been a few months since we've had vaccines available, and our overarching priority has been to get vaccines out as quickly as possible and not waste any doses. So we are, you know, when we were rolling out with schools and the public schools were ready to go, we worked that first week to get those doses we had available to the public schools because they were ready to vaccinate directly the public schools throughout Lane County. There was some frustration by private schools that they felt like that first week they didn't get as many doses. Well, it's because we're making sure we're working with folks who are ready to go and get vaccines out as quickly as possible. So, you know, we ask for continued patience and a reminder that our folks are doing incredible work to get every dose in an arm of a resident in Lane County for those who are eligible under the state rules. And we're going to continue with that great work that's happening. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve to walk through some of the details.
Steve, you're muted.
I am muted. And there we are. And good morning, Chair Bernie and commissioners. I'm hopeful you can see the famous epi curve on my screen. Wonderful. Yes. Okay. So I will, recognizing that we have a 10 o'clock time certain, I'm going to work to manage my slide deck quickly and condense my remarks and save time for questions. As you see, the state of disease has we're seeing the decline in reported cases. These numbers were current as of last night. This morning, 10,320 cases. That's an increase of 23 in the last 24 hours. A reduction of 16 to 161 of the individuals we're tracking as infectious. We have 18 hospitalized, 4 of whom are in ICUs beds, and that's an increase of 4 in the hospital and 1 in an ICU bed. And then we had an additional reported death in the last 24 hours, bringing us to 128 individuals on the pandemic. So as Chair Bernie noted in his opening remarks this morning, this past Friday, we came out of extreme risk and found ourselves squarely footed in the high risk category. So for large counties, of which we are one, the threshold from extreme to high, of course, was 200 cases per 100,000 with a testing positivity rate less than 10%. Our testing positivity rate has been low for a few months now because of the magnitude of tests that we're doing in the community. But you see now with the latest data, this is data current as of this past weekend, the 27th, that we're now at 112 cases per 100,000 and actually moving closer to the threshold of moderate risk. And so that next threshold down would be 100 cases per 100,000. And of course, a testing threshold between 5 and 8%. And of course, we are currently at 1.8% in terms of our testing. I really want to acknowledge the amount of communications that each of you are receiving. It is reflected in the amount of communications that we on the staff are receiving as well, through email, through social media, through telephone calls, and certainly through the call center and the volume of calls that we are receiving. And we have seen an increase in those calls that tracks pretty well, if you will, with the specific increase in eligibility for our age-eligible seniors in Phase 1B, Group 5. So as we began this process nearly a month ago, we had Wave 1, which was 80 plus, and that included an additional 17,000 individuals who became age eligible at that time. And you'll recall a month ago, we were still working through Phase 1A, and we were working on Phase 1B, the education sector, which came before our Group 5 eligibility. The subsequent week, we added 13,000 more in the 75 through 79 category. 2 weeks ago, when we went to 70 plus, we added an additional 25,000. Or 21,000 rather, and as of yesterday, when 65 plus became fully available, we now have 77,000 individuals in Wayne County, and these are OHA's population data, supplemented by Portland State University's Population Center. And you'll see, of course, the dose allocations that we were receiving with each of these growing populations. So over that period of time, as we added 77,000 individuals, we received just over 20,000 new prime doses into the county. And you'll recall too that we had earmarks on the doses for the first couple of 3 weeks in which we were continuing to work through the education sector and allocate doses. So the 20,000 that we received we've not had the ability to allocate all of those to our senior population. I think one of the larger kind of analogies that we've heard in the public space as people have raised questions for us is this notion of a line, a queue. When's my turn? We've heard people stating concerns about line jumpers and people getting ahead of us. We've heard concerns from people that are 80 plus that are concerned that 75-year-olds or 70-year-olds are getting vaccines before them. And really the kind of analogy of a line, I think, is the wrong analogy. It's really a pool. And the pool continues to grow faster than we can pull people out of that pool and get them slotted into a vaccine. The good news is that 2 weeks ago, OHA indicated to us that 6,300 was the baseline, the floor against which we could plan for understanding what our vaccine allocations would look like over the next 4 weeks, taking us out through mid-March. That, for the very first time since vaccine rollout began, gave us something bigger than just a 1 week planning horizon, and it has enabled us to continue to kind of scale our activities. And you see too in the numbers that this week we took possession of 7,320 first doses in Wayne County yesterday morning, and that then is being allocated for our activities for the coming 7 days. We also received word last night that Wayne County will be receiving 2,000 doses of the newly approved Johnson & Johnson vaccine that was approved over the weekend by the federal government. Those 2,000 doses will arrive in Wayne County tomorrow, I'm told. Wayne County Public Health will take possession of 900 of those doses. And then 11 of our Bimart locations are going to receive 100 doses each of this Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And of course, unlike the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, which require 2 doses, the Johnson & Johnson is a 1-dose regimen, and it can be stored in normal temperatures under refrigeration, which I think is incredibly helpful. We also have been advised that our 18 locations within Wayne County that participate in the federal pharmacy program. This is the Albertson Safeway locations. This is the Health Mart and our Costco are each receiving 100 doses as well this week. And then our community health centers, as one of 4 federally qualified healthcare centers in the state of Oregon, will also be receiving up to 500 doses in their first shipment as part of a new federal program as well. So we continue to work to stay ahead of the capacity curve as we get additional doses coming in to Wayne County. This past weekend, we had our 2 now MassVax drive-through sites operating for the first time. We delivered 4,500 first doses of Pfizer vaccine for 70+ individuals on Saturday and on Sunday at one of our sites. And at the other site, we began a 3-day Moderna boost clinic, which runs through today. And this is our effort to catch up, you'll recall, on the week delay that we had about 10, 12 days ago due to winter weather back east. So on Sunday alone, we managed to deliver 2,450 boost doses of Moderna. We set per hour check-in records 3 times over the weekend at that facility. And this was targeted for our phase 1A folks. So at the conclusion of our 3-day clinic this afternoon, we will have added over 5,500 new phase 1A individuals that have completed the 2-dose cycle for the vaccination efforts. So as we then pivot toward activities for the coming week, tomorrow we're doing our first mass vaccination effort at the Florence Events Center. We're delivering 1,000 first doses to 65+ individuals tomorrow. We're working with Search and Rescue here in the county, as well as our City of Florence partners. We're also planning 2 days of 1,500 boost doses on Saturday and Sunday for one of our drive-through sites. So on Saturday, it'll be 1,500 phase 1A, and then Sunday, 1,500 boost doses for 80+. We have 3 days of walkthrough clinics operating over the weekend with our education partners that will deliver 2,000 boost doses for phase 1B education sector individuals Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then on Saturday, we're returning to Florence on 3/6, and we will do another 1,000 dose clinic at the Florence Events Center. And those invites are out this morning for people to be able to schedule. We will be doing, in addition to that, 2 days of drive-through clinics here at our opposite site, our second drive-through site for 65+, and we plan to administer 2,800 first doses of Pfizer. We're also transferring 200 doses up to the Orchid Clinic in Oak Ridge, and the city of Oak Ridge and the Orchid Clinic will be doing a 200-dose drive-through there on this coming Saturday as well. Finally, on Friday of this week, we're providing 240 first doses to residents of 2 retirement centers and sending a separate mission to provide 50 boost doses to the residents of another retirement facility that fell out of the federal pharmacy program for long-term care facilities. We're also working with our partners at Peace Health to stand up some clinics that they are putting into motion at the Annex in Springfield, as well as Florence and Cottage Grove. They're ultimately ramping up to be able to provide 2,300 doses a week. It will take them a little time to hit that mark, but they are joining our efforts to get people through the process as quickly as possible. So just kind of compiling all of that, I would note that this graphic is current as of midnight 01 yesterday, so Monday at 12:01 a.m. We had 33,000 people, 33,824 according to OHA data that have begun the series, and 22,000 people who are fully vaccinated now in Wayne County. So that's a total of 56,000 people that we've been able to pull in out of our adult population of about 330,000 people. If you look at it just in the way of total shots administered, we've got 79,316 shots in arms as well. And then finally, commissioners, I want to flag that the governor did release this past Friday the path toward the general population, the phase 2 eligibility. So we will continue to work through our senior population over the next month as we move into the month of March, as we move through group 5 of phase 1B. And that the governor has announced eligibility beginning no later than March 29th of adults 45 to 64 with underlying health conditions, migrant and seasonal farm workers, seafood and agricultural workers, food processing workers, and people living in low-income senior housing, senior congregate, and independent living, as well as individuals experiencing homelessness, those currently displaced by wildfires, and then wildland firefighters. We then will have the month of April to work through that group, and then beginning to work in group 7 on May 1, which includes many of the eligible workers, as well as adults 16 to 44 with underlying health conditions.
Steve, if I may, it's 9:52. We have a 10 o'clock time certain. May I allow at this point commissioners to ask questions?
By all means. My apologies for running long.
You're fine. Commissioners, do you have any questions or statements for Mr. Adams? Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Thank you, Mr. Adams, for your report, and to your team for your responsiveness. These last couple of weeks, you've been tremendously helpful in helping me respond to constituent concerns. I think I want to just make a statement, which is, considering it's been a little less than 2 months since anybody had received any vaccine, the top line numbers I'm hearing that are really remarkable is almost 80,000 shots in arms and 34,000 individuals who've received those in fewer than 2 months. So kudos to you and your team, and thank you. I wonder if you could very briefly, for the benefit of the public, explain the difference between any programs that may be rolling out that are outside of Lane County Public Health's own self-managed, governed, and driven programs, because more and more of those are popping up, and it's creating a lot of confusion and concern about integration and coordination. Thank you.
Indeed, and thank you for the question. Just very briefly, we are seeing the Biden administration has launched 2 initiatives recently. One is a federal retail pharmacy program, so our Albertsons and Safeways are receiving, as well as our 3 Health Mart locations in our Costco are receiving 100 doses each week directly from the federal government through that program. And I understand that Rite Aid has also been added to that program and will soon be receiving doses directly. So that is outside of our shipment, and our role there is one of coordination to try to really have situational awareness of what they're doing. The administration also launched the FQHC program that is more tightly coupled, of course, with our operations here, and we have the ability to coordinate there. But that is, as we understand it, 500 doses a week going through our community health clinics, which is, also just a wonderful way to get doses into our underserved populations.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bernie, and I'll be very brief, Steve. Thanks for the great presentation. The numbers are fantastic. I wanted to point out to you, Steve, and to Karen Gaffney, who's listening, that you have provided me with adequate information and verbiage to answer just about any question that is thrown at me. As I said earlier today, it doesn't always make people happy, but it satisfies people that the process is in place. And you talked about line jumping versus pool, a line versus a pool. Thank you for that nomenclature. That will be helpful as I help to describe things for the future. And I think that answers my question. The 500 doses for FQHC, that's a total for all 6 clinics, not 500 per clinic. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chair Bernie.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair Bernie. That is correct. That is for the entire system, the 500.
Thank you, Steve. Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. Steve, could you just real quick address the fact that there is no secret website to sign up. And I've gotten a couple emails claiming that there's some kind of secret website and people are quote, jumping the line and all that because they know about this secret website. And could you just, reiterate for the folks in the public how to get registered for vaccine?
Chair Bernie and Commissioner Bozovich, thank you for that. Yes, no secret websites, I promise. Scouts Honor. There is only one very public website, that is our Lane County Vaccine Registry, which is it is on our COVID-19 page and very prominently displayed there. We are encouraging everyone to register there. It is the way that I can see you. I can see how old you are, and I can send invitations to you or call you when your time comes, when you're now age eligible, and we can begin to work with you to schedule clinics. For those who indicate that they need a phone call because of a technology barrier, we allocate staff to do outbound calls to get them scheduled before we launch the public invitation via email, which contains a link for people to then click and calendar a schedule. It sells out very fast, often, and these days they go very quickly. But anyone who fails to get into a clinic is not thrown out of the line. They don't go to the end of the line. They remain in the pool. And we continue to send invitations to you up until that time that we check you into the clinic, we verify that you've gotten a shot, and we check you out. That's when we remove people from the pool. And so it is absolutely not a secret email, no secret web addresses either.
Thank you. Commissioner Buck.
I just want to quickly say that I continue to get a good number of feedback about the efficiency of rolling in to either the fairgrounds or the other sites, getting their shots and getting out and on their way. So please extend my thanks to all the volunteers, all the workers that are out there, including yourselves. I know that you're out there quite a bit, and our administrator, Mr. Mokrajski, as well. It's been nothing but positive feedback, and so that is, I think, going really, really well. And as we ramp up with more and more doses and more people, this is an excellent showing of what Lane County can do to get this vaccine out.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I would like to say, Steve, my understanding is that when we were first given the allocation of about 6,300 per week, Lane County had one mass vax site. My understanding is we now have 5 in Lane County, and that the county, in anticipation, has really developed a capacity that is mind-boggling. And I think it's good for the community and the community to be aware that we have, and correct me if these numbers are wrong, but that we, just within the Lane County system, have the capacity to vaccinate 9,000 a day. So if you want to elaborate a bit on that, we'll just go a minute into 10 o'clock. But I think it's really important for people to be aware of the work that's been done. And I don't know, but I, for one, am so disappointed there's not a secret website, but thank you for clarifying that also.
Thank you, Chair Bernie, and thank you, Commissioner Bach, as well, for the kudos. I will pass that on to the team. I think folks who were frustrated about not being able to get into a clinic remain frustrated until such time as they roll through the gate. And we have seen many individuals, after they have had an opportunity to experience our process, really kind of change their minds about the process as a whole. We are indeed scaling up our capacity. We started with one drive-through facility. We put some thoughts as to what we thought the maximum capacity was, and we've continued each week through quality process improvements to just continue to try to up the capacity. And we realized that our initial numbers are way smaller than what we've actually been able to do in real life. We're also pushing out and working to staff multiple sites and getting ourselves up to 10,000 a week in terms of daily capacity. The constraint has been vaccine, obviously, and it's also staffing. But we're working hard to continue through a range of different kinds of partnerships with different organizations. For instance, we recently were able to sign a partnership with an MOU with Rotary International, and they have been providing volunteers for us on a very reliable basis. And so as we lean on state resources, as we try to bring additional individuals into the extra help category to staff these on a reliable basis, and then as we grow our partnerships, we are working diligently to ensure that we're staying 3 steps ahead of the supply curve and that we have the capacity to deliver every dose that we get into our hands.
And Chair, I'll just add one, if it's all right, one really quick data point for you, because everything you said and Commissioner Buck there about our capacity increasing. We went at the beginning, in January and early February, we were far behind Marion, Clackamas, Washington, Multnomah County in our per capita vaccination rates. If you look now, we are above. Lane County our per capita vaccinations are above Marion, Clackamas, and Washington counties, and we trail Multnomah just by a little bit. We're kind of inching up towards Multnomah County, but we have over 56,000 people in Lane County have received at least 1 dose of vaccine. That's around 20% of the adult population, right? So we're making progress. We're not there yet, but all the efforts that you talked about are bearing the results of demonstrating the fact that we're actually, one of the highest per capita vaccination rates of the large counties in the state.
Well, it is 10:02. Steve Adams, Steve Okrahysky, you have all of our kudos. Carry on. I know we're not there yet. At the risk of having our 10 o'clock time certain wait just another minute, Commissioner Trieger, did you still want to make an additional statement?
I just was going to ask a simple question when people get that email link to schedule their appointment. Thank you, Chair. On the secret website issue, I think people were forwarding links is where that originated and came from, is my understanding. And so I was wondering if that link is unique to the email recipient or if that might continue to be a challenge for us, people forwarding the scheduling link.
And very quickly, Commissioner Trieger, no, it is not unique to each individual.
Thank you so much. And if I may, I'm also delighted that in the week following your ability to bring our risk category down from extreme to high, we are hovering so close to bringing that down further from high to moderate. And I know that can't be done without your work and without the partnership of everyone in our community. So thank you so much. Commissioners, we are now going to jump on the agenda to our time certain, 10 a.m. time certain item, which is item 8A under County Administration, Order 21-03-02-08, in the matter of approving the January 2021 Lane County Community Safety Repair Plan update, developed and recommended by the Public Safety Coordinating Council. I know that Vice Chair Farr represents us on that council, and here to speak to this item is Paul Solomon and Denise Walters.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. For the record, my name is Paul Solomon. I'm the Executive Director at Sponsors, and I am the Chair of Lane County's Local Public Safety Coordinating Council. Denise, you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, PSCC Chair Solomon. I'm Denise Walters, and I staff the Public Safety Coordinating Council. And we will have a PowerPoint, so I'm asking respectfully now if there's a way someone can help me share my screen when the time comes. Thank you.
And actually, the time is now. If we can do that, that would be great. And I have to say, I appreciate the time certain only ran over a few minutes. I had a time certain doctor's appointment yesterday that was 45 minutes late. So you guys are doing quite well. So we're here today to talk about the 10-year Community Public Safety Repair Plan, which was also known as the 10-year Public Safety Plan. This was, you can flip to the next slide, was originally developed by Alex Gardner when he was the district attorney here in Lane County. But I first want to talk a minute about kind of the plan's history and aspiration. So 2020 has been, the last year has been one that has shone a light on system inequities in our public safety system. The PSCC has begun the process of really looking at system inequities. And as a result, we have engaged a work group of the PSCC, the work plan work group, to undertake this work. But there's a little dissonance between that work and this plan. And I'll just give you a little more background. So, you know, at the time that Alex spearheaded this plan, Lane County had experienced an evisceration of our public safety system, beginning in the 80s and leading up to the decline in the secure rural schools timber subsidies. We have begun over the course of the last 7 or 8 years really rebuilding that public safety ecosystem. And there are a number of pieces that as we go through this plan, you'll see that we have been able to restore. The timeline for this year's plan did not align with our work group on equity. So it is our belief that next year's plan will look very different from this year's plan. Ooh, that was an interesting look on the slide. Okay, next slide. So Denise, you want to kind of walk us through the phases and where we're at?
Sure. So when the plan began, as Chair Solomon said, in 2015, and it was chunked into these 3 or 4 year segments. The first group of time to really try to restore or sustaining what existed still of the system. The next phase was to try to build back the key gaps that the PSCC thought were necessary to provide community safety. And then the ideal would be from 2022 to 2025 to have all system needs met. As part of that original plan development, I think Chair Solomon referenced the goal at that time was to reduce future community victimization. I think the goal or plural goals is something PSCC will likely revisit with the development of the 2022 update. But some things that are likely to stay the same are some of these overarching themes where each of these system components is interdependent on the other, and they really do function as a whole system. The system as a whole aims to agree to priorities and to achieve them, and thinks of it fairly holistically in terms of operational and capital resources. Chair Solomon, was there anything you wanted to add on the goal and themes?
Nope. Thank you.
So the plan, as you might have seen, relies on a pretty common traffic light system of ranking the no progress, in progress, and complete. And here you can see all the system components included in the plan. And then each one has achieved the phase 1 priorities and are then in various states of achieving phase 2 and phase 3. And so the color code is a quick glance look at progress to date.
So we're now going to walk through the various agencies, and I know that some of these agencies report to the board with some frequency, so some of this information may not be new to you. So with some of the agencies that you hear from a little bit more, we're going to kind of go through quickly, but we want to touch on each agency that is a part of the plan. So the Corrections Division of the Sheriff's Office, couple highlights are the success in the medication-assisted treatment program, recently a federally funded grant initiative that is allowing the jail to provide medication-assisted treatment. One of the needs that I'll highlight, and this has come about as a result of COVID, is the expanded use of the electronic monitoring program. It's an area where they've seen a significant increase in utilization and a need for additional funding. The agency is in phase 2. Costs are still kind of TBD on some of the pieces for phase 2 and phase 3. Next slide, please. The DA's office, probably the biggest, oh, actually, wrong slide. Sheriff's Office Police. So this is the only component of the work plan or of the public safety plan that is not out of phase 1 and into phase 2 because of lack of funding for rural patrol. There have been a number of successes that I know you all are aware of, but I do want to highlight that in order for the Police Services Division to move through phase 2 and into phase 3, the costs are significant. Next slide. The DA's office, probably the biggest thing was restoring a full capacity for felony prosecution. That happened a few years ago. The needs, I'll highlight one of them that has come up recently, and that is the public safety levy in the city of Eugene that has increased the staffing level in policing. And the concern that will over time increase the cases that are coming to the DA's office and the need for potentially additional felony prosecution and DAs to handle those cases. Next slide. Public Defender Service. This is a newly added component. It wasn't in the plan previously. The group recognized that the Public Defender's Office is an integral component of our public safety system, and we added it to this year's plan. One of the biggest changes in the Public Defender's Office in Lane County has been the state's shifting in a funding model that previously reimbursed on a case rate basis. And it was a very antiquated model that incentivized defenders taking on more cases just to get adequately compensated. And they've since shifted to an FTE model that more adequately reimburses and sets case limits on the number of cases that an attorney can handle. In the needs area, a couple things that I'll highlight. There's been a desire to start an expungement clinic here in Lane County. Other counties have successfully implemented expungement clinics in partnership with the District Attorney's Office and public defenders to apply for people who are eligible for expungement. And a need for additional staffing to manage the Public Defender's Office is another gap in their system. Next slide. Department of Youth Services, a lot of good things going on there. They've doubled the number of behavioral health beds, tripled bilingual staff, initiated trauma-informed collaborative problem solving. I think one of the big gaps in their system, and you guys have heard the red report, is strategic action to establish equity within the juvenile justice system. Next slide. Parole and probation, a lot of work has occurred at PNP over the last 6-7 years under the leadership of Donovan Dumeyer. They've been able to prioritize the highest risk caseloads and actually drop the size of those caseloads pretty significantly, although they still have above average size caseloads for moderate and low risk individuals. They've been able to create specialized caseloads for women, people with behavioral health issues, domestic violence caseloads, and the treatment courts. And those have all been very successful. On the needs side, Lane County, the state does not reimburse the county for the supervision of people convicted of misdemeanors. So we have some pretty high-risk folks in our community that have been convicted of sex abuse 3 or assault 4, which are domestic violence charges that we don't have funding for. There's a grant that provides a little bit of funding, but many of those cases are not supervised because there is no dedicated funding source. Another gap is the need to do what they call correction program checklist evaluations of treatment providers to ensure that they're being done with fidelity to the models that they're operating, and a need to continue to decrease the caseloads, primarily for those moderate risk individuals. Next slide. Reentry. This is a subject I know a little bit about. So at Sponsors, where I work, we've had a number of successes over the last 6, 7, 8 years. We've created a number of new permanent supportive housing units. The Oaks at 14th, 54 units. Most recently, the tiny homes that we completed construction of last year that the county helped fund with a HIP grant, and increase the transitional housing units. The other thing that we've had to deal with over the course of the last year is adapting to COVID-19 health and safety guidelines and managing a population of people coming out of the state prison system that have very high incidence of COVID. So that's been a huge challenge for Sponsors organizationally. On the needs front, I want to focus on just one area, and that is an initiative that we call the Way Home, that is 100 units of permanent supportive housing at the Oaks and in the form of scattered site, either public housing or Section 8 vouchers. That was originally funded with the Department of Justice grant to look at the nexus between people with criminal justice involvement who are homeless, high risk and indigent, and permanent supportive housing. At the 2-year mark, we've served 115 people, and 95% of them have not re-engaged with the criminal justice system. So that's a 5% recidivism rate, and 91% of them are still stably housed. We're doing a rigorous evaluation of this program that's funded through this DOJ grant, but funding for this project will run out next year. So this is something that we're very concerned about sustaining, given at least the initial very positive results that we've received. Next slide, Denise, I think you're up for these next couple.
Yes, so Lane County Behavioral Health, I think you all have been hearing from Ms. Gaffney on the wonderful lift she and her staff and programs have been doing. We're grateful to have them at the table. As you all know, the mental health component for those involved with the criminal justice system is huge. It's just a massive factor in our system. And so I think you're familiar with the impacts grant LCBH was able to obtain to establish the forensic intensive treatment team. They worked very hard to coordinate mental health services actually in the jail and to continue those once folks are released. and again have been able to increase access to medication assistance treatment, because we know the mental health and the substance use disorders all often go hand in hand. And so to have that integrated response is very important to our system. Needs and gaps, I think you have heard the need for a mental health crisis center, getting more rural mobile mental health systems and response units out. Again, expanding still the match in the medication-assisted treatment and addiction treatment, and basically having all these services be low barrier so folks can engage and continue to sustain their treatment. Speaking of treatment, we have a community-based treatment component as well, and the Affordable Care Act really has expanded access for the community to have these services. 2, 3, again, it's the medicated assisted treatment. Peer support has been a huge factor in success for people engaging with treatment, and the trauma-informed component, knowing that trauma is an underlying factor for many, if not most of those engaged in the system. So again, the needs and gaps are really to fund and transition to a fully trauma-informed approach, to bring in as many evidence-based practices as possible and promising practices, and then sustain them. And so those are the pieces related to the treatment provider evaluations, the resources to implement the evidence-based practices, and the domestic violence piece. I think PSCC Chair Solomon referenced parole and probations needs to continue to be able to supervise both the misdemeanor and felony. And part of that is an intervention program that really meets evidence-based practices, which we are happy to report are coming on strong in the county now. In the circuit court, some of the successes they have reported are the treatment courts. We have an adult treatment court, we have a veterans treatment court, and a mental health court. All 3 are serving lots of folks here in Lane County. The circuit court lists one of their successes as the COVID-19 adaptations. I think as for many, that was a huge puzzle to figure out, and they were able to do that and continue to have people move through the process in as much of a timely manner as possible, in no small feat due to the coordination of pretrial services with also the jail to make sure when people do need to wait a little longer for their trial, they can do so while not being in jail. Again, I think you all are pretty familiar with the needs in terms of courthouse security in the existing building. The need for a new courthouse, which you might not be as familiar with, is the juvenile treatment court staffing. There's a grant right now to bolster that, but that again is for a limited duration. And so really to bring that juvenile treatment court piece up to a fully staffed model could go a long way. And then additional judges is a need identified by the circuit court for regular docket work. And then I think, as you may have seen, for some of the backlog and additional cases that might be coming through the circuit court. And then Kids First, they're our Lane County's Children Advocacy Center. So they serve children who have been subjected to child sexual abuse, physical abuse, severe neglect, and or have witnessed domestic violence. And so they were able to move to a new facility over on 18th, which gets them the ability to serve more families. Because of needing to keep this folks private and feeling safe at their old facility, they could only support 1 child at a time, but the new facility allows 2 to have services on a parallel time frame. The other issue they're struggling with right now, so that's a success. They have a new facility. They increased staff by 25% since in the new facility. The medical examiner, Dr. St. Germain, who has been amazing, is retiring, and there's been some struggle to find another provider willing to take on this caseload. And in fact, it's so difficult, they're now actually looking at finding 2 to take on the caseload to avoid burnout, given the size of the county, and I'm sorry to say the need in the county for these kinds of services. So you see here in the needs and gaps, that looks like 6.5 FTE of additional staff to meet increasing demand. There has been a notable increase since the COVID pandemic has hit. And so they are doing everything they can to keep up with that need, and for both medical and mental health services for the children. And then hopefully, once those gaps are met, they can also move into their child sexual abuse prevention programming that they've been planning for a while and hoping to implement, and that would require 3 additional staff people.
Okay, we're going to quickly wrap up here with a couple of slides that look at some of the challenges moving forward. The Public Safety Coordinating Council makes recommendations to the board about grant and aid funding, which comes from the state to pay for parole and probation, sanctioned beds at the jail, and a range of supports, as well as the Justice Reinvestment Grant Program, which was initiated to reduce the county's dependence on prison beds and reduce recidivism. Funding for both of those programs are projected to decrease substantially in the 21-23 biennium. We're anticipating statewide a reduction from 200, and this is based on the governor's recommended budget, a reduction from 268 million to 242 million, which is about a 10% reduction. Lane County's share is about $23 million. So we're looking at a pretty sizable reduction in our grant and aid funding. Next slide, please. The Justice Reinvestment Grant Program, similarly, we're looking at about a 10% reduction based on the governor's recommended budget. This current biennium, we received $3.9 million as our share of the statewide allocation. Lane County is we receive a little less than 10% of the statewide funding based on the number of people on felony supervision in the state. And that funding is projected to be reduced by about $400,000 this coming biennium. So I will stop there. I know we're nearing the half-hour mark, and open it up for any questions.
Thank you. Do commissioners have any questions or comments for Paul or Denise in this presentation? Vice Chair Farr.
Just one slight correction, Chair Bernie, and that is that Commissioner Bozovich has been representing the Board of County Commissioners on the PSCC for I think about 10 years now. And I will hear any comments to him, but Paul, excellent results, particularly on the re-entry programs. In that it's near and dear to your heart, I'll make a brief comment on that. I would that we had the same kind of success in the other initiatives we have in the county. Thank you.
I apologize, and now I know Commissioner Bozovich is never going to let me live that down. And I think he's going to begin that process right now. Did you want to say something, Commissioner?
Thank you. No, that's just I'm not going to jump on that. I want to note a couple things going on just for the folks as we're talking about this public safety repair plan. We have a lot of things that are endangering the progress we've made so far. And Paul noted one of them in the Community Corrections Act funding is looking like we may have a major decrease based on somewhat, I believe, misguided predictions of what our caseloads will be in the future due to Measure 110. And I think people aren't understanding that usually felony drug charges are also in combination with some sort of felony property crime charge. And we aren't going to change that property crime dynamic. And one of the things we're seeing is a rural patrol system that's incapable of investigating property crimes. So as we see the decriminalization down to misdemeanor for a lot of drug crime, we're going to see probably a increase in property crime in our communities to support those drug habits. And yet that's the one place in rural Lane County we have not made progress at all, is in our ability to investigate and resolve property crimes. And so that nexus between reducing Community Corrections Act funding, which is about supervision, and whether or not we're going to actually have people going on to supervision property crimes, is going to be very interesting. And that kind of gets with the city of Eugene's increase in their police. They're probably going to see a lot more property crime being turned over to our DA and court system and ultimately into our supervision system. So there's that dynamic going on, and something to pay attention to, and the board should be talking to our various legislators as much as possible about maintaining our Community Corrections Act funding, because it was never even close to what is required to actually supervise the populations out there. The Times study showed that. I don't know if you guys hadn't looked at that graphic close enough, but we are way behind in funding community corrections, of which a significant portion funds Paul's operations. You know, that's a major funding source for his operations. So it's not just about parole and probation or the sheriff's department, it's also about sponsors. And that gets to another nexus here of our mobile mental health crisis can't expand if we don't have police coverage to back them up. And we were fortunate when we got the 2 extra FTE in West Lane County, that now we're going to be able to start reaching outside the city of Florence with some of that pilot program we have going under that grant in West Lane County. But we can't expand into any other areas of rural Lane County with any sort of mobile mental health crisis response, because we don't have the ability to back that crisis response team up with law enforcement. It's why it works in Springfield and Eugene, is there's an adequate enough police force to back them up. But until we fix rural patrol, we can't deal with mobile mental health crisis in rural Lane County. So we've got this twofold thing happening between Measure 110 and mental health issues, that not moving past phase 1 with rural patrol is really a problem. So I just want to kind of make those couple things aware as you look at this public safety repair plan. There's some danger in it going backwards with lack of funding, or just imbalance in the system. Like the city of Eugene moving forward with additional police force, yet we don't have the DA staff to back them up. So we have to be careful about keeping the system balanced too. So just know that there's all those moving parts behind that, and we'll continue to keep working on it. But I am happy to report that at the same time as we're dealing with all these issues, we are working on some of the systemic issues around the inequities, and have a work plan work group working very seriously on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Paul, did you want to respond, or Denise, or otherwise I'll call on Commissioner Trieger. Okay, Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. That's a great segue, Commissioner Bozovich's comments, because I think it just speaks to the need to be addressing root causes, and the concerns around Measure 110 and more broadly really speak to the crisis we have in inadequately funding behavioral health services and addiction treatment. Because ideally, if we were doing that, we wouldn't have the overload of cases in the system, and for rural patrols and ultimately our DA and courts and criminal systems to address. And that brings me to my primary concern as I look at the presentation is around child welfare and what we're seeing in the Kids First program, and the comments Ms. Walters made about the lack of capacity for investigation. And the saying, you can pay me now or you can pay me later, right? If we're not addressing the cases of child abuse and the child welfare issues that we have, we're never going to plug this hole and this basically this fire hose that's open of people flooding into our system, into our criminal justice system. I'm especially worried in our post-COVID world as schools reopen and more mandatory reporters are back on the job, and what is going to be revealed as is happening behind closed doors as families are in lockdown under the incredible extra stress and strain economically and otherwise that this pandemic has caused. And I would imagine Chair Solomon maybe has an actual number. I don't want to put you on the spot for it, but the percent of adults that are currently in the system who themselves were victims of child abuse and sexual assault, I'm guessing that number is astronomically high, and we cannot ignore that link and the need to address root causes and start as far upstream as early as possible in making families healthy and whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm sorry, Chair Solomon, were you going to respond?
Yeah, Chair Burney, Vice Chair Farr, Commissioner Trieger, I think your point is well taken, that so much of what we see with individuals in the system stems from past traumas and abuses they've experienced, whether it's physical, sexual abuse, or whether it's other issues that they've experienced living on the margins in our community. Homelessness, trauma associated with domestic violence. We did a study a number of years ago with Oregon Social Learning Center where we looked at everybody on supervision in Lane County and all of the females and interviewed them. And what we found was in the year prior to their arrest, over 85% of them had experienced violence or threats of violence at the hands of their partner. So we know that in many ways, trauma is a huge driver of people's engagement in the criminal justice system. And we're not doing enough on the front end, and we're not doing enough on the back end. You know, in a perfect world, we wouldn't need programs like sponsors. But as long as people are entering the system, we're going to need to address these traumas and addictions that people are dealing with. But certainly a more robust investment on the front end for programs like Kids First is critical.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Bozovich?
Thank you. Commissioner Trieger reminded me of one thing I wanted to mention also, which is a possible source of funding for some of these programs that will help with the addiction issues and the treatment is the opioid settlement. And one of the things we need to continue to lobby also on is making sure that comes down to the local level. I'm in the middle of reading a 70-some page report that Rob Bovet at AOC provided the Public Safety Committee leadership on opioid crisis and best practices. And they're all things that are executed at the local government level, not at the state level. And we need to keep reminding our legislators and the governor's office that funds from that settlement need to come to local government where they'll get executed the most efficient way as far as the maximum amount of treatment programs. And that's just another piece of the puzzle. And I think with that settlement, we can maybe make a dent in this with some of the best practices they've identified. It's a really great study. The authors of it read like a who's who across the country of major colleges and universities. We just need to keep that pressure on to not try and rob that and have, like the tobacco settlement, have it go to fund general government instead of the actual treatment programs. We need that to come down to the local level and really hit the road locally as treatment, for all these folks that are suffering from the opioid epidemic, which is now exceeding alcohol for intakes as far as into substance abuse programs. So it's an incredibly important thing that we keep focused on, is try and get that funds from that settlement into our local government hands where it will actually do the most good.
Thank you, Commissioner. And for the benefit of the public, this is an ongoing issue, is distribution of these funds and where decisions are made for the best deployment of these funds. Is there another commissioner that would like to make a statement or question? Seeing none, I would like to say first, Paul, looking good. And, you know, both to you and Denise, I admire your passion and your compassion. I recognize that this is an underfunded system, and in some cases it doesn't feel like a system at all. I know that's the intent of the council. And I would just like to make this statement, which it maybe even is inappropriate here, but it is my belief that public schools in Lane County and across this state represent the greatest juvenile delinquency prevention agency, potentially, of all the agencies we fund. And 40 years ago, I had the opportunity of being involved in a study that was funded by the then Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And it discussed the roles schools play in engaging young people in their lives through curriculum, youth participation, so that they early on could generate a sense of security, a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose in their life, a feeling of usefulness that they could contribute, and competence, and an understanding of how it feels better to feel comfortable than uncomfortable, and feel a sense of belonging to a group rather than being isolated, and generating hope for the future. So is there any connection between the Public Safety Coordinating Council and work and efforts in our public schools at this time?
Chair Bernie, members of the board, at this point, we don't have representation from the school districts on the PSCC. Once upon a time, we did. It falls a little outside of our purview as a body, but there definitely are connections, and it's actually something that we recently had a discussion about with our executive leadership team about ways that we may be engaging with folks from the school districts. I think probably the one area where there's some nexus has been with our juvenile committee and education. But clearly we know that education is an antidote, frankly, on the front end and on the back end. Research has shown that people who get degrees in prison, frankly, don't reoffend. And people who get degrees earlier in life also don't wind up engaging in the system. So to that end, we recognize that there's very much a nexus and link.
Thank you, Paul. You're speaking to someone who has a brother-in-law that in San Quentin received an apprenticeship in sheet metal and once out, stayed out. Commissioners, if you notice in your materials for this item, we do need a motion here. And I'm wondering if anyone wants to make a motion to adopt the order to approve the January 2021 Lane County Community Public Safety Repair Plan update developed and recommended by the Public Safety Coordinating Council.
So moved.
I'll second.
A motion has been moved by Commissioner Bozovich and seconded by Commissioner Buck to approve the order to approve the January 2021 Lane County Community Public Safety Repair Plan update. Is there discussion to the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Against? Nays? And this order, made by Commissioner Bozovich, seconded by Commissioner Buck, is unanimously approved. Thank you very much, Paul and Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a full day, and we are now going to jump back to where we left off, which is approving the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
Chair Burney.
Vice Chair Farr.
Chair Burney, I move to approve the consent calendar for March 2nd, 2021.
Is there a second? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Trieger, was that you? No, Commissioner Buck. Sorry. It is Vice Chair Farr has moved we accept the consent calendar, seconded by Commissioner Buck. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? And the ayes have it unanimously. The consent calendar is approved. Item number 7, Health and Human Services. Order 21-03-02-05 in the matter approving receipt of a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care grant. And we have with us to discuss this Karen Gaffney. Karen.
Morning, Chair Burney and Commissioners. It's actually been wonderful to listen to your meeting this morning and talking about public health issues and public safety issues, all of which you know are central to our department. And today the items that I have on your agenda relate to our efforts in housing and homelessness, which is another key part of the work in our department. This first item might be considered routine business because it certainly is a grant that we routinely receive. At the same time, it really is a core part of our work to address homelessness in the community. So I wanted to take just a moment to lift up the fact that we are requesting approval from the board to accept our Continuum of Care grant application from the Federal Housing and Urban Development Agency, and that's a total of $2.2 million that comes into the community to support specific projects that are targeted at people who are chronically homeless, and then also a couple projects that really help support the infrastructure of our work in the community. And I know you have a very full agenda this morning, so I'm not going to take a lot of time going through each of these projects, but I will let the public know that the packet is posted online, and it includes a description of, let's see, about 10 specific projects in the community that are operated to help move people from chronic homelessness into housing. And again, a core piece of the work that we do, both on the staff side and then also through our Poverty and Homelessness Board, which includes not only the Board of Commissioners, but also key strategic partners. So maybe I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions people might have.
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Burney. And I had asked this be pulled from what was originally the consent calendar during the agenda setting meeting last week. But one, just simply to state what Ms. Gaffney's already stated, but also to remind the Board of Commissioners that we are required to have a continuum of care agency or board in Lane County. And that board is our Poverty and Homelessness Board, serves as our continuum of care. That board reviews and make recommendations regarding the continuum of care grant, and that's what we're saying today. Ms. Gaffney, thank you very much for all of the work that staff puts into this. Such a tiny item, such a huge amount of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other commissioners? Seeing none, do we need a motion?
Sure,
Commissioner Buck? I'm sorry.
Did you say my name?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I move approval of order 21-03-02-05 as presented.
I'll second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Buck, seconded by Commissioner Trieger to approve order 21-03-02-05 as presented. Is there discussion to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. And Order 21-03-02-05 in the matter of approving receipt of a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care grant made by Commissioner Buck, seconded by Commissioner Trieger, has been unanimously approved. Thank you, Karen. I think we're going to see you again. Item 7B, Order 21-03-02-06, in the matter of 3 amendments with St. Vincent de Paul and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved actions. I believe Commissioner Buck would like to make a statement.
Thank you, Chair. I am going to recuse myself. I have a conflict of interest in this particular item as I'm related to the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul. I will turn off my camera for this item and turn it back on when we get to the next item. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any, well, actually, Karen Gaffney, would you talk us through this item?
Thank you, Chair Bernie. And again, I will keep the presentation brief. This item includes 3 specific contract amendments to increase our expenditure authority in our current contracts with St. Vincent de Paul, specifically for COVID funding services. 2 of those are COVID rent relief services. And as the board knows, we have recently received notice of significant increase in allocation of COVID rental assistance dollars, and St. Vincent de Paul is one of the not-for-profits who helps us be able to actually process those rental assistance applications and move those dollars into the hands of people in the community who are qualified for rental assistance. So this enables us to increase our contracts with them for that service. And then the 3rd amendment is for motel emergency shelter services, again, also connected with our work around COVID relief. So those are the amendments that we request approval to enter into today.
Thank you, Karen. Are there any comments or questions for Ms. Gaffney on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Chair Bernie.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. I move the passage of Order 21-03-02-06 in the matter of approving 3 amendments, etc.
I'll second.
Really? You're going to second the etc. part? I'm sorry. It has been moved by Commissioner Farr, Vice Chair Farr, and seconded by Commissioner Trieger to approve Order 21-03-02-06 in the matter of approving 3 amendments with St. Vincent de Paul, etc. All those in favor of the motion, or excuse me, is there discussion to the motion? Commissioner Bozovich.
I just want to quickly note for the public that the total increase in rent relief we're approving in these contracts is $10 million. So just so folks know, we talked about significant increase. You didn't give a number, so I just wanted to kind of put that number in there, that the increase we're talking about is 10 million from the previous 10 million.
Thank you very much for calling that out, Commissioner. Did I interrupt you? Were you going to say anything else?
No.
Are there any other comments? I really appreciate Commissioner Bozovich's calling that out. This is a big deal. This is hugely significant. And even though we are moving through these at a clip, they are nothing that we take lightly. Any other comments? Okay. It's been moved by Commissioner Farr, seconded by Commissioner Trieger. Order 21-03-02-06. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay? The ayes have it unanimously. I'm sure we'll be seeing you again, Karen. Okay. I'm waiting for Commissioner Buck to join. Yeah, there she is. Okay. Hello, Commissioner. I'm used to you passing the gavel before you leave, so I was caught a little flat-footed. It's good to see you. Item 7C, Order 21-03-02-07, in the matter of approving 5 contracts and 22 amendments and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved actions. And we have to discuss this with us, Karen Gaffney.
Chair Bernie, commissioners, again, I appreciate the point absolutely that while these items are routine in terms of our processing, the impact in the community is significant and far from routine. So while this agenda item talks about 22 amendments and 5 contracts, I do want to give the board and the public just a sense in my 2-minute presentation about the types of services that we're talking about here. These amendments, the contracts include services for our wildfire survivors. As you know, we've been able to acquire a hotel to be able to provide temporary housing. And today in this list of contracts, we have revenue agreements and expense contracts to provide services to those people who will be living in the hotels. So that's an important piece for both the board and the public to know. And then also in this list of contracts and amendments, we have, again, significant subcontracts to help us move COVID rental relief assistance dollars out into the community. And I don't know if Commissioner Bozovich was doing the math as we turn to this item or not. I have not added up the total in this, but what I can tell you is we have both a new contract with Looking Glass Youth and Family Services to help with that effort, and then we have a large number of amendments to add additional authority to our network of nonprofits in the community who help us, again, get those rental assistance dollars into the hands and bank accounts of people in our community who need those dollars. We have increased the cap on those contracts significantly, and that accounts both for the rental assistance dollars that we have, the new ones we have already received from the Treasury Department, and then also an expectation that we may get additional rental assistance dollars so that we won't need to come back to you every time we need to increase the maximum on those contracts. So you will see on that list, and again, the full list is linked on the county agenda, but includes a host of not-for-profit providers who will help us with rental assistance dollars. And then also we have some additional amendments in our mental health services, both for mobile crisis services in our child system, crisis services that are provided through our partnership with Whitebird, and then also mental health residential services. So I'm happy to answer questions about the contracts, but it is a significant list in front of you today that represents very important services that are delivered on the county's behalf by our nonprofit partners.
Do commissioners have any questions or want to make any comments? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. Let's start with 22 and go backwards. No, I am kidding. It'd be hard to let's single out any one of these contracts for discussion. So I'm going to go straight to the motion and invite discussion to the motion. I move passage of order 21-03-02-07.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion 21-03-02-07 in the matter of approving 5 contracts and 22 amendments and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign has been moved by Commissioner Farr, seconded by Commissioner Buck. Is there discussion to the motion? I did notice Commissioner Buck's hand up, so we will start with her.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a note, even though this particular order has several substantial items in it, that Ms. Gaffney pointed out, it has the operational funding in it for Project Turnkey that will be opening next week. it's just a testimony to how quickly we are able to turn that project around and get it open for people that are victims of the Holiday Farm Fire. And I appreciate that so much from you, Ms. Gaffney, and your team. Thank you.
Commissioner Bozovich, I'm not going to call on you if you added things up on the back of your napkin at Ms. Gaffney's suggestion. Well, I'll call on you. We'll see what you have to say. Commissioner Bozovich.
Yeah, it's just under 29 million in rent relief in this set of contracts, plus the 10 million in the previous ones is $39 million in rent relief that we just increased. And that's the increased amount, not what we had already provided.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I didn't mean to steal your thunder there. The number is so big I couldn't have. Are there any other comments? Commissioner Farr, are you putting something in front of us for us to read? Oh, no, it said you.
No, I'm plugged.
Okay. Are there any other comments to this motion? I would like to also state, if I may, that by virtue of spending these dollars, and as Commissioner Bozovich mentioned, it's no small number. And as Commissioner Buck mentioned, our staff has just been working around the clock to secure resources for the needs of Lane County residents. And by spending this money with local nonprofits and local providers, we are also recycling money in the community. We are keeping people in our community working, and we are delivering services to people in our community, which to me is one of those virtuous circles that our community benefit agreement also speaks to. So thank you, Karen. Seeing no more discussion, it's been moved by Commissioner Farr, seconded by Commissioner Buck. Order 21-03-02-07. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any nays? This motion has now been approved unanimously. Ms. Gaffney, I don't see, I don't see her anymore. Okay. We are now going to move right ahead. We had our time certain, which was item 8A, and next on our agenda, item 8B, is a report about Lane Lane County semi-annual report. And I know Carrie Westland is here. And Carrie, if you would take it away, we would be honored to hear what you say.
Bernie, Vice Chair Farr, Commissioners, thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to come before you with one of our 2 annual reports that we make, this one being on the period July through December for the program year that we are in the middle of. I appreciate the opportunity to spend just a few minutes, and I'll work through this pretty snappily since you do have such a heavy agenda. We've heard about public health and we've heard about public safety, and you're going to hear a little bit about economic development now focused on the tourism sector. And it's no surprise to you that the first half of the program year has been tough for everyone. We spent more time than usual during this first 6 months of the year working closely with members of your Lane County staff team on emergency response, use of hotels for emergency housing needs, helping businesses connect with resources, and a myriad of wildfire recovery tactics. And I know that you hear a lot from constituents when things go wrong, but our regard for your staff team at Lane County has grown even more over these last 6 months, witnessing the intense efforts put forth from virtually every department, from administration to economic development to public works and public health. And I'm sure that everybody on your team is tired. I'm sure you're feeling tired too. But I hope that you all have a really keen sense of accomplishment. And I just want to say how proud our team at Travel Lane County is of our mothership, Lane County government, and say thank you for the work of everyone on the staff as well as those of you on the commission. So we budgeted transient room tax going into the year, which of course reflects overall commercial lodging revenue to be down 31%. We create our budgets early, just like you do. And when we got through the first half of the year, we find that it was down about 29%. We originally projected a strong finish for May and June because at the time we were budgeting, we were expecting mass gatherings to normalize by this spring. That feels a little less certain now, but we do feel the rollout of vaccinations will continue to have a positive influence on consumer confidence and on public health guidelines. So we're just going to continue to focus on maximizing economic recovery within the constraints that we're all facing. We closed the Gateway Adventure Center location at the end of December after 10 years, and we are working on a plan to deliver stronger tools to frontline workers so they can field questions and inspire nearby adventures for their customers more readily, whether those customers are visitors or residents. We also want to create a stronger connection with our 24/7 comprehensive content online for visitors, whether they're planning their trip or they're already here and looking for information. In addition to marketing and promotion, we focus resources on destination development with a full-time position dedicated to working with communities, collaborating on visitor product like tasting trails, cycling routes, tracking projects like your bicycle master planning process that's underway, wayfinding, grant application support, and during this first 6 months of the current fiscal year, wildfire recovery. We supported a large number of destination ready grants, and several in Lane County were funded as part of almost $1 million in grant funding that was recently announced by Travel Oregon, including projects in Westford, Cottage Grove, Coburg, Florence, and along the Mackenzie River. We are still hoping to find support for the projects that didn't receive funding in this round, but Lane County came out pretty well in that mix. We have been working to track the public recreation assets of the Mackenzie, which, as you know, are spread across multiple jurisdictions and agencies, as well as to support tourism-related businesses. We are tracking everything on a Google Doc that is updated regularly. We're happy to make that link available to you anytime you might need it. Just feel free to reach out to me. We're also tracking tourism business booking volumes. Some tourism businesses have been open, reopening immediately after the wildfire and operating as typical. Belknap Hot Springs is an example of that. Many paused with a focus on reopening in June. And I can say that summer bookings are looking pretty strong for lodging properties up the Mackenzie River corridor. We have some concerns around activities. Guides and outfitters remain concerned about boat ramps, river access, and really public perceptions about whether the corridor is available for summer recreation. Lane County Parks submitted one of those destination ready grants, and we're hoping to help them with some incremental funding that they need to find to get those boat ramps ready to go. In terms of the lodging sector overall, we've seen gains and losses in hotel rooms. The Travel Lodge, the Phoenix Inn, and the Red Lion have left the market or are getting ready to leave the market, while we've been able to welcome the True by Hilton in Glenwood, the Gordon Hotel, and soon the expansion of the newly named Best Western Hayward Inn, which was formerly the Best Western Green Tree right across Franklin from campus. For the period, we saw what we anticipated in terms of a drop in occupied rooms, lower room rates, and a drop in the hotel sector's key measure of revenue per available room. The Holiday Farm Fire, as you know, created a lot of room demand in the fall, not the kind we're trying to create, but and at a much lower room rate than fall typically commands, which is normally influenced by home football games and mass gatherings through that fall season associated with conventions. Our convention marketing team retooled its advertising campaign that targets meeting planners and worked with local venues to highlight risk mitigation and safety protocols. We're working on Q3, which is fall, and Q4, winter business bookings now. hoping to book business into that time frame that will stick and not need to be rolled forward into later periods, just as we are awaiting to see what happens with health guidelines. Similar work is happening on the sports side with a lot of focus on helping local sports event producers understand and meet the guidelines. We took our Oregon Sports Summit virtual during the period. That was well received by attendees. And both of these targets, as you know, are at the mercy of the mass gathering restrictions. And we're feeling the disparities in guidelines from state to state as we watch other states lean into their competitive advantage of having fewer current restrictions. We're working very hard to honor ours and just be patient as we all wait for reopening to occur as vaccinations roll out. Within tourism marketing, we know our quickest pathway to economic recovery for the hospitality sector is through building hotel demand from individual leisure travelers that are looking for safe and appealing vacation destinations. We've been pressed right up against the public health guidelines throughout the first half of the year, messaging to local and very nearby audiences, encouraging staycations, and connecting people to safe recreation ideas, takeout dining, hotel specials, and virtual events. Those few and targeted campaigns that we have run have been successful. And for the most part, we've been rolling our advertising budget forward so we can invest appropriately to regrow demand as things start to open up. We're poised to broaden that messaging with the vaccination rollout and as we move through these guidelines phases. In integrated marketing, we've seen declines in our web traffic as we'd expect, and a pretty dramatic shift to about half of our web visits coming from residents of Lane County, which matches up with the messaging and the content that we've been creating. We were able to participate in a national study that ran from May to December on the importance of websites. This free research confirmed that our web content was valuable to our audiences, whether they were visitors or residents. It confirmed that there has continued to be trip planning throughout the period, future trip planning by people who are anxiously awaiting the opportunity to get going again, from visitors who know they are coming here when the time is right, and also from prospective visitors still shopping destinations, which, as you know, is an important target for our online marketing efforts. We have really focused in on storytelling and content, and the study was very ratifying in confirming that our work was perceived to be very valuable. We received an extraordinary opportunity from Tracktown USA just recently in the gift of national television advertising, a spot within a recent national indoor meet produced by the American Track League and broadcast on ESPN. Our integrated marketing team had a broadcast quality ad produced within a few days, focused on that very niche audience that knows Eugene as Tracktown USA, loves the sport of track and field, as well as running. The program had 11 million viewers, and our ad was, at the great extra surprise, was bonused a second airing within the program. It's received more than 7,000 views through social sharing from our local efforts. And we can't play the ad readily within the virtual meeting format, but Andy has put a link to that ad in so that you can get to it. And I'll follow up with an email to all of you so that you've got a ready click to the YouTube video of that ad. It played super well. We were very proud of it and very appreciative to Tracktown USA Corporate for gifting us that spot. Within stakeholder relations, supporting the industry and the community has been both challenging and rewarding during the first half of the year. We moved very quickly to a weekly industry update format. You should be seeing or should have seen over several months weekly updates from us. We've moved those back to once a month now that we're moving through these phases. And we have worked to provide quick links to resources and regular up-to-date information. We've worked very collaboratively with chambers of commerce throughout the county so that we could all build efficiency, use common campaigns, and try to minimize the information overload and conflicting messages that I think all Americans were feeling during those first 6 months. Our events all went virtual. We continued to deliver recognition and accolades through a virtual visitor industry celebration. OB companies received our Destination Award for the 5th Street Market expansion that Lane County was a big part of. Jeff Magato of the University of Oregon received our Convention Leadership Award. Modo Taekwondo, our Sports Legacy Award. Marianne Brisbane in Florence, our Community Leadership Award. Wildcraft Cedar Works received our Stewardship Award, and we gave a special Sports Legacy Award to Tom Jordan, who's been the meet director for the Prefontaine Classic for decades. We've worked to keep our member stakeholders connected to our marketing programs, regardless of their ability to pay dues in this year. So just briefly in summary, we expect to continue to see reduced revenues through at least fiscal year 22. We're planning and building budgets for FY22 right now, just as you are. We are projecting revenues of TRT at about 85% of a typical year, which would get us halfway back from this year's losses. And then the World Athletics Championships, 500 days from today, if you're counting, will open in July of 2022, which will be a kickoff for fiscal year 23. That international event won't show up in FY22. It will actually be in FY23. So we're continuing also to work on long-range goals like the indoor track, a sports and event center proposed for Glenwood, which is currently estimated to be a 5-year project to completion if all goes well. The Springfield Community Development Corporation appreciates the opportunity to work with Lane County on a couple of different items related to that project. Travel Lane County is tracking and supporting other projects as well, from hotel and conference space to build out a fields plan for Golden Gardens and the master planning of Suzanne Arley Park and the Georgia Pacific Natural Area in Springfield. So there's always a lot of work underway. I wanted to get through this quickly in honor of your agenda. I'm happy to field any questions that you might have, and we appreciate your continued support and investment in growing the hospitality sector in Lane County.
Thank you very much, Carrie. That was great. We have both Ms. Westland and Andy Vabora with us. Do commissioners have any questions or comments for either of them? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. And Chair and Carrie, I have little or nothing to add to that very comprehensive report, Carrie. You have a lot to report. It's hard to fit everything into 4 hours, let alone 20 minutes, but very well done. What I do have to add at this point is, once again, my personal thanks to you personally, to you, Carrie, for the work you do that extends far beyond your job description, far beyond your duties with Travel Lane County and Eugene Cascades and Coast, and into the future of our community. You mentioned briefly working with Springfield Development and working on what is going to be a state-of-the-art, world-class indoor track facility, and you're leading the effort toward that. That's just one of the many things, Carrie, and I'm not going to say much more about it other than thank you for your decades of devoted work to Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, Ms. Westland, and hi, Mr. Vabora. This is my first update from Travel Lane County as your commissioner, and it was fantastic. And I know I, like so many in our community, and particularly myself as a former service industry worker, really appreciate the challenges that have been faced. And I'm so excited and looking forward to being able to get back out in community and enjoy recreation and cultural events and so on. And so thank you so much for your work and for this great report. I did just want to offer one gentle request of a reframe. When you mentioned one of the greatest challenges was being at the mercy of mandates, and really what we are all at the mercy of as individuals, as households, as industries, and individual businesses, we're at the mercy of a highly contagious and very dangerous respiratory virus. And I think it's just really important to keep that framework in mind as a way to help. And I'm asking for your partnership in that as your public health authority to help with that framing and messaging to make sure that everyone in our community understands what the common goals are and what the common challenges are that we're facing. Thank you so very much again for just a great report, for great work, and for everything you do to keep Lane County such a really wonderful and robust and exciting place to live and play. Thank you.
Commissioner. We were before the board 6 months ago. We spent a lot of time talking about Travel Lane County's support of that exact messaging around just safe travel procedures, a lot of reflection of public health guidelines. So you're absolutely right. I certainly didn't mean to sound off point, because we've really leaned in to support Lane County Health, and we very much appreciate the work of public health and have really honored those guidelines and message points. So thank you, because we are in complete agreement with you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other commissioners that would like to comment or ask questions? Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Briefly, I'm so glad we were able to get through your report in one piece this time. I know last time was really challenging with the technology. I did want to thank you for your work up the McKinsey. There's a lot to do to reestablish businesses up there, help the guides, a lot of tourism questions and concerns about if we'll be able to see people come back this year upriver. And I do hope we can do that. And the help with Travel Lane County, I will really ensure that we can let the public know that the McKinsey Valley will be back in business. We just need to help them recover as fast as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. We have done a lot of messaging about being respectful of residents upriver. We know people feel some sensitivities, and so we've tried to support businesses where they are. They're at different places along the continuum. And so we're working hard to honor the folks upriver and kind of guide the public to those places that are ready for visitors and protect those businesses that aren't ready yet. So thank you very much.
Any other commissioners wishing to comment at this time? Well, I notice we can neither approve or not approve your budget. We're not taking emotion here, nor do we want to. But Carrie, that was an excellent report. My compliments on the technology. Andy, I'm sorry no questions were directed at you, but you're a great team and we thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we are now going to item 8C, discussion in the matter of presenting the second quarter FY 2021 financial report. And we have Christine Moody here to guide us through this part of our agenda.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Burney, Commissioners. So as noted, this is the second quarter financial report. So we're looking at the time period that ended December 31st of 2020. So I know that the commissioners are probably well aware of some of this economic data, but we do like to kind of revisit the prior quarter and see how our funds are doing, and in particular the general fund. So a few things I'll highlight for you in the report. In the executive summary there at the beginning, it discusses unemployment. For Lane County specifically, our unemployment was 3.3%. If you look back a year ago, December 2019, it was saying the wrong direction there. 5.9 2020. A year ago, it was the 3.3. So just under double there. The CPI for the West, BC West that we look at was 1.5% for the calendar year 2020. And then one data point that we also watch is the housing costs. And you'll see there in the executive summary, we mentioned that housing average sale cost went up 12.2% between December 2019 and December 2020 in Lane County. We also have a few pages there of additional data for you on unemployment. I do want to point out to you that the U6 unemployment rate there is not available yet for 2020. So that's why you see just a chart. I believe it's on page 2 of the report, and rather than some 2020 data. I did look back and it looks like it was available near the end of March last year. So we will look to that and bring that to you the next time we report to you. There is some additional data there on building permits for Lane County specific to our land management. There's not a big year-over-year change at that point in time. We'll probably see more when we bring the third quarter to you. And then some information that we pull from the Oregon economist, Brian Rooney, who comes to speak to us about the income in Lane County. So maybe to talk a little bit about the status of the county's finances. In particular, you'll see you have a report there on the general fund. So we do see that revenue, we obviously have adjusted our budgets as we've seen the COVID impacts, and you'll receive another supplemental budget from us here in a few weeks. But right now, the general fund as of December 2020 was trending just slightly below a year ago. When you look at the amount of revenue that we've brought in as a percent of budget, just 1.1%. Some of that is the lagging, some of that is some budget adjustments needed in a few areas, such as car rental tax is one in the general fund that has definitely been impacted, and you'll see that in the supplemental budget. On the expense side, we're seeing that expenses are a little bit higher than as a percentage of budget. Nothing alarming, of course, we're still well within our budget, but just showing that we have spent those funds as they've come in. There's things like the personnel expenses occurring even around the fire. The sheriff's office is in the general fund. So some of those adjustments, but again, nothing alarming there. Countywide, while you don't have reports on other funds there, we do continue to see, it looks like the report's coming up. I'm assuming that's Diana. Thank you very much. So other funds, as I mentioned, we don't have a report in here specific to the other funds, but we continue to see the same things that you've heard about us from already. You just heard about the tourism, the TRT dollars being down. So we see that obviously in Lane Event Center and parks, the internal services there. And then we also, I mentioned car rental tax. We have not only the economic downturn, but there was a bankruptcy of a large car rental place in Lane County, Hertz. So we see that creating a little more impact too. And then gas tax in the road fund. And then you have other places where fees are down. So nothing that I want to sound huge alarm bells over. You're seeing those in supplementals, as I mentioned. So the status of the budget we are monitoring. And you'll continue to hear, of course, we're coming up on budget prep. So we're just beginning to look at the 21-22 budget, and you'll hear more about that from us in the coming weeks and months. So with that, I am open for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Moody? Yes, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question on the actual page that's in front of us here on the screen. When you scroll down to the bottom number of the current budget, this negative $80 million. I was hoping you might be able to expand on that a bit. And if it includes, all the extra expenses that we're expending for COVID-19 and the wildfires, and where we would see the reimbursement eventually from those items, not on this budget yet, or probably a couple more cycles down the way before we see that reimbursement come through. But, it kind of hits you here, negative $80 million, and how are we managing that?
Sure. So that's actually, as you mentioned, it's in the current budget column there. We do put a note down at the bottom in an attempt to explain that. That is a lot of carrying forward of funds that are then spent in the next year. So it's that net ongoing operating revenue versus expenditures. So it does get confusing. I apologize if I'm not explaining it well, but it is the difference between that ongoing operating. So it's not directly related to the fire at all. I don't think we've had that hit the budget yet. You might see more of that happen in the supplemental 3 that you're going to get in a few weeks. We did have a couple places. We, of course, hired a recovery manager, came to the board for that. So you've seen a few places. We increased expenses for the EOC, but we've adjusted our reserves for that. So there's no alarm as far as the expenditure amount at this point. And as you mentioned, we'll be reimbursed. So that we'll use reserves, which the board is well aware. We've spent a lot of time in recent years making sure that we have reserves to cover these catastrophic events in the road fund and general fund. And so we're comfortable with the reserves that we have and that we'll be able to cover those until we receive reimbursement from FEMA. What we hear is that it could be 18 to 24 months for some of those reimbursements. It really is, we work through the process with FEMA, so not something we're in complete control of. We might see some of it in the 21-22 budget would be the hope, maybe towards the end of the year, but some of it may well come back to us in 22-23. So we kind of keep you apprised of that as we know more.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I don't see any other commissioners that would like to ask a question. If I may, Christine, and if it's premature, just tell me. I know you will. But, COVID, worst natural disaster in the county's history, businesses closing. Are you at this point able to estimate the revenue impact to the county anticipated next year?
No, we have just received department budgets. And in fact, a couple of them are still being turned in this week. So I don't have a number for you yet. We would also want to look back to, of course, this is happening in the current year budget also, and the end of 1920. So that was the first adjustment you saw, was that final supplemental there. So we'll have more information. We do expect that the board may get a preview of the budget rather than waiting until the budget committee. Steve will be done with his reviews with departments by the end of March. So I would expect, and I see Steve coming on to give you more information there, but we'll give it to you as we have it. Yeah.
I see him coming on. I couldn't read his mind, but I'll bet you're right. Steve?
Yes, so departments just finished entering their budgets. We're reviewing that information. Our plan, we are going to have department meetings throughout March. Our plan is that Christine and I will come back to you later in March with a more refined forecast for next year. I will caution you that it's not going to look better. It's likely to look more challenging than it did in January, based on a number of factors that you alluded to, Chair. So we'll bring that more refined forecast to you by the end of March. And I will just add, we don't typically do that. Part of it is everything that is happening that is causing some of these revenue and expense challenges, and there's so much fluctuation there. And as the numbers have become more refined, we feel like it's really important for us to come back to you before we begin the official the discussion with the budget committee on the official proposed budget. So this is the update you'll get at the end of March is a little bit unique compared to prior years, but this last year has been rather unique in a lot of ways.
Understated. Are there any other questions from commissioners or comments for either Christine or Steve before we move on? Christine, is there anything else you'd like to share with us on this item?
No, thank you, Chair Bernie. That was all I had.
Thank you so very much. I believe our executive session is this afternoon, not this morning. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
If you'd like, I can do announcements. I just have a couple of brief announcements, then we'd be done with that, and you don't have to do it this afternoon.
Well, if you're asking me, I say go for it.
Okay, two quick things. First, I noted in the kind of introduction to the COVID item, and I just wanted to call it out again, that we've had a number of really productive conversations with the University of Oregon as our partners in COVID-19 response, and the extensive work that they continue to do on surveillance testing on campus. We know there have been some, questions and concerns in the community about the number of cases on campus, and there's a reality that the University of Oregon, as well as Oregon State University, I would note, are doing a significant amount of surveillance testing on campus, which is really a good thing from the standpoint of managing this pandemic, because they're catching cases on campus and dealing with it, and we're doing and coordinating with all of the contact tracing and everything. But we also recognize that extent that the amount of testing that's happening on college campuses, that surveillance testing, is to some degree weighing against us on the risk categories, and what's not being recognized are other areas that are significantly low, right? Like hospitalizations and utilization of ICU beds. Those are really low in Lane County. And so we're having conversations with the U of O, and we've now reached out. We had a great conversation last week with the University of Oregon, Oregon State University, and Benton County, recognizing that there are some of these unique factors that are happening on the two largest college campuses in the state, because OSU is doing a lot of this surveillance testing as well. So I just wanted to flag that for commissioners that we're having these conversations. I've had a number of, I was late for our agenda team meeting this morning because I was on a call at 7:45 with the Benton County administrator. I've talked to almost every day for the last week, sort of going back and forth about what Benton County is dealing with, Lane County is dealing with around, and what OSU and the University of Oregon are dealing with. So there will be more that we'll bring to you to talk about that. And we are working with Chair Burney and the Benton County Chair in discussions with the state as we move forward on that. But I just, again, wanted to flag some of those conversations because it's come up in prior board meetings. The other thing I wanted to note, we've talked a little bit about, the Red Lion, the facility that was formerly known as the Red Lion, 599 East Broadway, is now a Lane County asset. It's a public asset. And I want to just recap for the board, because on January 12th, 2021, the Board of Commissioners approved the purchase of 599 East Broadway. County staff worked and has worked really, you all noted the quick turnaround that our staff is so incredible about moving really with alacrity and speed on these initiatives. We worked really quickly with the Oregon Community Foundation and numerous consultants to conduct a due diligence process on the property. No significant issues were found as part of that process. As a result of the due diligence work and Lane County's grant application as part of the Project Turnkey grant request, the Oregon Community Foundation Board of Directors approved the grant for Lane County to purchase the property. Their board approved that on February 11th, 2021. Lane County then lifted our contingencies after the due diligence and the approval by the OCF board. We lifted our contingencies to purchase the property on February 12th, a day after. We scheduled the closing for February 26th, and Lane County and the seller signed the purchase documents, and we received the keys for the property on February 26th, just last Friday. And the deed was recorded yesterday, March 1st. Homes for Good has already begun work to prepare the building, so we're contracting with Homes for Good to do some minor improvements. The facility is rather new and in really good shape. I've had a chance to tour it, a number of county staff and folks have had a chance to tour and inspect the facility. So it's in good shape, but some minor repair work and other preparations are continuing on the site this week. So we look forward to opening that facility for Holiday Farm fire evacuees in the very near future. And then of course we have plans and visions years down the road for utilization of that property for other low-income permanent supportive housing needs once we can get our fire evacuees relocated and permanently housed where they ultimately want to be upriver. So we're really excited about that. I want to particularly, so many people have been involved in that work, Health and Human Services, Nevada in our Human Services Division, who wrote the grant application, Steve Manila, of course, and a number of our facility staff. But Jeff Kincaid at the staff level, he is one of these people he's an incredible utility player, and he is management analyst in county administration, and he's had his hands on projects from Four Corners to 100 River Avenue to now this 599 Broadway. So I know you all know Jeff, but he's done really incredible work at great speed and great thoroughness in working with all the partners and and shepherding everybody through this. So really a particular shout out to Jeff Kincaid for his great work on this project and so many others. Yes, thank you. That's it, unless you have questions on that or any other matters for me, Chair.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair Bernie. I just want to point out that Jeff Kincaid is one of my great heroes. In addition to the work he does for the county, he's also a commander of 2 National Guard units. That's 2 units. It's a pretty remarkable work that Jeff does here, and also for the state of Oregon and the Oregon Army National Guard.
Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you. I'm going to take advantage of Steve talking about U of O and our COVID response to say a couple of things I skipped earlier because I was concerned about our time certains. First, I just want to commend the U of O. Any way you look at it, they have dealt with and are dealing with their outbreak that started with the term and students coming back very well. They've really done a great job in reducing the number of cases on campus and off campus as far as the student population goes. And they've been great partners with us in approaching OHA and the governor about the metrics and how we're being measured. And that was my biggest concern, was I felt like we weren't being fairly measured. But one of the things that has been a benefit of the U of O's great testing program is it's actually led to a lower positivity rate in our county because they're testing so much, it actually reduces our positivity rate. And they've got some statistics around that. But so I really appreciate the U of O's partnership and the work they've done to get control of the situation there. And they're dealing with a population that's not necessarily easiest to deal with. I remember being between 18 and 25 years old. Social distancing wasn't very natural at that age. So they're doing a great job. And I just want to note one other thing. There were some posts that went around social media last November, December about how we weren't really seeing excess deaths from COVID-19 in this state. And it was mostly due to misinterpretation of mortality data coming out of the state and the difference between the date, the issuance of the report and the actual date the reports were relevant to. We are now far enough past the end of the year that we've got preliminary data for all of 2020 for total deaths in this state. And no matter how you look at it, as I go back over the last 21 years of data, we are seeing at least 2,000 excess deaths in the state of Oregon over the year for all causes. And the only real explanation for that increase, and that's a significant increase, is the fact that COVID-19 was present in 2020. So anyone that wants to diminish the seriousness of this disease, call it just a flu and all that stuff, needs to go back and look at those numbers. I put them out on social media. If people want to look at my page, they're available there. But we saw more than 2,000 deaths in Oregon beyond normal. I mean, our normal was somewhere between 82 and 89 deaths per 10,000 based on over the last 21 years. And then last year, it was 93 plus deaths per 10,000. That's a big jump. So I just want to stress to folks, it's still a serious disease. We still need to take precautions, even though we're rolling out the vaccine. It hasn't rolled out second doses to our population, or only a small percentage of our total population. We're not positive how it's going to be effective with variants and everything else. People still need to distance. They still need to mask up. They still need to wash their hands and take precautions. And it is a serious disease. And I just wanted to have a chance to say all that. Didn't quite get a chance to say it earlier when we were talking about COVID, but the fact that Steve brought up the work he's doing with the U of O gave me a chance to both commend the U of O for the work they're doing and also just to repeat some information that I put out on social media, which is there is definitely an increase in deaths in Oregon last year, and the only explanation is COVID-19.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to recognize those folks at our state level that implemented Project Turnkey for various communities throughout the state. AOC, the Association of Warden Counties, was instrumental in trying to move that policy and funding through the state legislature. There are folks that are our local reps on the e-board that allocated money for that project. It is so desperately needed for wildfire victims throughout the state, and I want to make sure that we give them the credit that they are due, because it really will make such an immediate impact on our local fire victims. It's so appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other commissioners that would like to weigh in here? I would just like to add to what Commissioner Bozovich said. I believe as a result of parallel and joining conversations with the U of O, OSU, the Benton County Chair, Mr. Mokraheisky, that I think what's being developed forthcoming is a database based upon new data and more data ability for us to discuss with the state some of the opening and reopening metrics. That's what I anticipate. At the same time, without even doing that, you can see how our numbers are looking good. So I'm hoping we can stay the course, and I'm hoping we can remember what Commissioner Bozovich said. We're not out of the woods yet, but we definitely are on the path if we can stay the course. Mr. Mokraheisky, anything else from you before we move forward?
I'm good. Thank you, Chair.
I see item 10 here. Is there any other business commissioners have at this time? Seeing none, we are now in recess and will reconvene at 1:30. Thank you very much.